The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions, and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Tastes just like candy.
What did he say? Join your channel. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ask for Candy, where a bunch of powerhouse women and a few brave dudes get together to talk about love, sex, relationships, and what it takes to be amazing on the daily. Who I am CandaceHarperLoveCoach.com, coming to you live from the beautiful heart of Chelsea. I teach and inspire audacious intimacy to powerful, professional, grown women who want real relationships from seductive singlehoods. More importantly, I help single city women over 35 who have given up on love stand boldly in their purpose, stop getting ghosted, and create unconditional love. And we're here in a beautiful and comfortable location with old and new friends. Clap for yourselves, everybody. Woo! We have a fantastic room full of beautiful people today, and you might be listening on your TuneIn app on Armed Radio with your smart device, or you're in the garden on armedradioglobal.com. We're also on iHeartRadio, so if you have an Alexa, you can ask for Candy. And for the streamers, we're also available on Spotify and Spreaker, right? That's wonderful, right? Or maybe you're live here with us on Facebook. I know you guys are going to trickle in. You know, you guys can always talk to us as you come in. You can comment, and we'll comment back. And if you are on Facebook, I want you to join my group, the Creative Love Collective, and Armed Radio Group News, so that you can keep up with everything that we're doing and everything that we're talking about and be part of the conversation. Also, you can call in. If you're shy, you can email. The call-in number is 1-800-508-5431, and the email is askforcandypodcast@gmail.com. Like I said, I am Candace Harper, Love Coach. My talent is conversation. My passion is personal growth. And my purpose is to teach and inspire radical self-acceptance in myself and others so that we can all have our best possible love life. What's going on, Jimmy? I hear Jimmy yelling. Jimmy, I can hear you. And you guys know, those of you who listen regularly, Jimmy, my producer. What's going on, Jim? Oh, I guess nothing. Right. Anyway, so that's why this is a conversation. Jimmy, I hear you. Jimmy, I don't think Jimmy hears me. Hello?
I can hear you.
Oh, what's up?
What do you want me to do?
I don't know, you're talking. I could hear you talking. I thought you were trying to talk to me. Were you trying to tell me something?
No, I'm on the phone. Let me get rid of my microphone.
Okay, thank you. Who's that came in? My cousin Yolanda, he's multitasking. You go, the Armed Radio people, they know Jimmy. Jimmy has his own show called Pot Talk, and if you watch that show, you know how Jimmy is. Anyway, that is why this is a conversation. We're not here to hand down a bunch of dating or relationship rules or rights and wrongs. We're not here to shame your love situation. Our only intention is to create audacious intimacy, seductive singlehoods, and healthy relationships. So tonight and every Monday night, we're going to do what we do, which is have a conversation that engages, educates, and enlightens all of us in the areas of love, sex, relationships, and high vibration. And speaking of high vibrations, I have a really very special guest here tonight. Founder of Embodied Voice and Haptic Body, Megwyn White, has spent over 20 years researching and exploring the dynamics of human emotions as they are mapped inside the body's tissue. That's very interesting. You'll have to talk about that a little bit.
All right.
She graduated from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, so did I. Oh, yes, alumnus, where she focused on physical theater and dance. She studied yoga, Pilates, Taoist techniques, Tantra, and more extensively, the structure and architecture of the human body with teachers like Yamuna Zaki, am I saying that right?
Zake.
Yeah. Yamuna Zake, creator of Yamuna Body Logic and Yamuna Body Rolling, and Rael Izakowitz, founder of Body Arts and Science International. Through years working one-on-one with clients, she discovered patterns of contraction in relation to the energy of voice within the body. Her somatic body technique, called Haptic Body, includes powerful self-care tools which work with the technology of touch to help awaken and naturally clear the constellation of emotions. The constellation of emotions that are often locked inside the body's tissue as fear, shame, and trauma. Right? Hello. I got an amen back here. I heard it. Right? She now works as the director of education for the Satisfier. We're going to be talking about the Satisfier. I tried it out this weekend, y'all. I'll tell you, I got a lot to say about the Satisfier. A German-based sexual wellness company focused on bringing orgasmic empowerment across genders and socioeconomic backgrounds. So the goal of this show is to get to know this fabulous woman and what she's bringing to the world and learn exactly what an empowered orgasm is and how to have one, and also to walk away with a few more tools in our creative sexual toolbox. Yeah, you're going to bring all that energy. All right, so Megwyn, do you want to say something to the people? Just say hello, or just give them a little personal something about yourself. I feel like yeah. You can just say hi.
Hello, everybody.
Everybody in Armed Radio. Do you want us to tell us a little bit something personal about you? Where do you live? Where are you from?
I reside in Brooklyn, in Bushwick, in sort of like the artist capital of New York. And I've lived here now for, I guess, total about 18 years in New York.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely a New Yorker.
Yes, honey.
Originally West Coaster from California, Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you're here, and I want you to tell us all about both embodied voice and haptic body. And we were talking earlier before the podcast, because we're like, how do we, even get into this conversation? Because I've heard you talk about it before, and it sounds very fascinating to me. And we were talking about how do we actually apply it, and how you help people with their different stuff, right? So you're an actress and a performer, and that sort of was your foundation. So a lot of what you do, would you say that it helps people sort of get out of their their blocks to being able to express and
I mean, basically my work consists of self-care techniques and tools. So they're like simple exercises that you can do that take 1 to 5 minutes. And it's about kind of resetting your nervous system. So when you have a lot of stuff that's just kind of circling your brain, emotional things that you're not processing, that turn into manifestations of tension in your body, where you're feeling like, I'm not feeling like I'm able to really express myself. The techniques are really there to reset your body and help you to integrate and process that information, because emotional energy is actually also information. And it's not something that we typically really acknowledge sometimes. We sort of think, it's emotion. It's just I can't be, worried about these emotions right now because it's not, as important. But
I stuff it down. A lot of people
stuff it down. And oftentimes it's hard to access that energy, that emotional energy. So my work, obviously as an actress, was really about that, was really about, okay, how do I tap into these different emotional states, and how can I do that night after night, with lights on me and the pressure of, performing, and how do we do that actually in real life? Because an actor, I think, is also a medium for resetting our nervous systems too. We relate, we empathize with the actor. We go to the theater so that we can cry our eyes out or laugh, hysterically. And so I think I always connected with that since I was little. I always was just so fascinated with just that power, and that just kind of continued forward after I graduated. And I just was like, you know what? Like, I want to be able to connect with this, but also through an authentic experience of myself, not trying to be a character, but actually being able to be myself. And I started to my work basically is about how to access that through the nervous system. And one of the things that I've discovered over the years is that it all connects back to the sexual center. It all roots back to that. I
want to interrupt you for a second, because there's a couple things that you said that kind of touched on, because it's not just, we have a couple, like I know Kuala's a comedian, we have a couple people who do presentational kind of work, right, and need to get on stage, but we also have people who, like Pam, works with people, has to communicate every day. We have people who have jobs where it's like they want to be able to be in their full, authentic self-expression.
Right.
So talk to us about like the sexual connection to that.
Well, okay, so first thing we have to talk about is the vagus nerve.
Okay.
If you haven't heard about the vagus nerve, basically this is a neurological plexus that connects our brain and our deep visceral organs. But basically the organs that keep us alive, our heart, our lungs, our digestive system. But the vagus nerve is also tied intrinsically to the voice and also to the connections of the face and to the muscles of the inner ear. So what does this all mean?
Yeah.
Basically, it's the part of our nervous system that allows us to bond and connect and have real relationships. So as you're, nodding, and you're listening to me, that's your vagus nerve actually responding. Being able to interpret the sound of my voice, the facial expressions that I have, and even just more subtle things like the quality of, the way everything looks as a whole. We're reading in that information, we're processing that through our nervous system. So I'll just kind of go backwards a little bit. What also got me into a lot of this is that I had experienced for the majority of my childhood, I would say, from the time I was 6 till I was 13, so a big chunk, intense sexual trauma and abuse that was very much that disconnected me in a lot of ways, right, from experiencing my whole self. And, thankfully, I had the opportunity to act and to perform, and that kind of kept things online. And I always had this intuitive sense that I need to write everything down, to not suppress it, to not, try to forget it, to acknowledge it, and that one day I'd be able to express it without feeling ashamed, because I knew as a young child, like, this was not right, But so with people struggling with trauma, and this is kind of the newest research, a lot of the research around the vagus nerve comes from the scientist named Stephen Porges, and a lot of the modern somatic science, because this is a movement. There's many different people doing similar type of work that I do, but kind of going at it in different ways.
And somatic is just having to do with the body, right?
Yeah, somatic just has to do with having to do with the body. But basically, the vagus nerve has specifically, it really integrates our awareness of how things get trapped and in the body. Often, before that, we worked a lot from the head. We were trying to psychoanalyze. We would talk things out. But then people would have these, releases in the body and kind of need to process things. Yeah. And we really didn't know how to deal with that. And so through somatic science, through a deeper and deeper understanding, is, we're always obviously learning about the connections of the vagus nerve and just, the whole body, the body as a whole. We can now work with resetting some of these patterns. And a lot of it focuses on the connections of the face. And that's kind of what my work really explores a lot. So when you have something like trauma, sometimes what you'll see are patterns of what are called low affect. So minimal facial expressions, especially in the upper portion of the face. There's just not a lot of expression happening there, or a kind of narrowing in the voice. You also hear this I think in terms of how we're conditioning men, and in a lot of ways, to repress their emotions. You kind of hear the voice is kind of like stuck in this kind of way, and there's no real variation or prosody within the sound. Yeah. So my work kind of bridges the world of expression and somatic science, and everything that I know about sexual trauma. Obviously, having had that experience and having had that disorganization, I've learned how to reorganize all of that through working directly with the body, through getting everything back online. Because with any type of trauma, and you don't have to have sexual abuse or intense type of trauma, you could basically have been ignored when you were a child, and that could be even more severe trauma, because you might not acknowledge it as a trauma, because we know now that we need attention, we need affection, we need touch, we need the voice, actually, as even when we're young babies. It's really important that we have those connections so that the groundwork is actually laid for our nervous system. So my work is, really for everyone, but, for people that didn't have that kind of background, that sort of groundwork, I can work with kind of educating them, almost in the way you would have gotten from your mom. You know, like we need those sounds to connect.
But also that's, along the lines of that, I think that when we don't have that, and also the fact that you work with the body, I think so much of what we suppress and don't heal shows up as disease and shows up as things in our body. So I think that's another really good reason to be working from.
There's so many good reasons, really, that, you know, we have to work with the body. And the way I describe it to people is, you know, for me, my work, it's like simple techniques. They don't take a lot of time. So it's kind of like if you brush your teeth in the morning, you take a shower, you know, in the morning and at night. These are very quick things that are also resetting our body. We do them because they feel good. Yeah. So once you start getting introduced to what I would say are like haptic techniques of kind of self-care or working with your voice, it doesn't have to take like an hour and a half of like intensive practice. You know, even some of the stuff we're going to learn tonight, these are simple things and they're going to shift your state like immediately. And I'm sure you guys all know your own techniques too. We all have these kind of, you know, go-to strategies. Sure. And the more we learn about the nervous system and, you know, how it connects, it actually helps us to kind of like go a little deeper. Because prior to learning about the vagus nerve, I was doing a lot of this work intuitively. I was like, oh, this is just really making me feel good. I'm making these sounds. And
was some of it also from your acting training? Because I feel like in acting there's a lot of like vocalizing.
Some of it was, but it was there was a specific time in my life I had been doing a lot of body work for many years. I was working like extensively in this sort of architectural kind of body work, and I loved it. But I was missing that connection of the voice. So that's when I started to tap into a particular technique of working with the voice that kind of sounds a little weird and looks a little weird. But when I started sharing it with people, and I had a friend that was doing intensive trauma work, and she was like, oh my God, you're totally working on the vagus nerve. And I was like, what's that? And so then once I started learning about that, I was like, oh, this makes sense. And then I gave myself more permission to go much deeper with it. Because oftentimes, you know, to reset ourselves, we do have to look a little weird. We do have to put ourselves out there, and especially if we, you know, we didn't have the opportunity to be seen and heard, you know, when we were young, that can feel really uncomfortable. So
awesome. Well, I want to say hi to some of the Facebook Live people, and then I want us to get into like some exercises. Right? Are you guys willing? You're willing to do a little stuff, like a little demo? So I want to say hi. I see Lee is on. I see Steve, who's here with us, is also on our Facebook Live. I see Dwayne and Deb. Hi, you guys, and Ed Zukowski. Hi, honey. So we're gonna dive in and do it, because here's the thing. I don't know. Those of you who have been watching the show might know I've mentioned before that I'm a little bit of a repressed singer. I used to sing in piano bar. I was a singing bartender. I wrote a one-woman show. Total performer. Thank you. But I haven't sung as a performer in a really long time. Like I sing every day with my headphones on, like when I'm running or in the shower, but I have not performed in a really long time. So, you know, you were saying that some of the exercises that you do, they sort of open up this whole situation. And there might be like something emotional behind it, right? Like I feel like when we stop expressing ourselves in ways, that there's sometimes something that's there that maybe is like maybe unexamined. And Pam, you work with trauma survivors, trauma and abuse survivors. So I feel like this is a good.
I'm just trying to hold it down because, you know, I want to take notes. I think I went back to look at the podcast. I just learned a whole lot. Just, you know, sitting here and like you know, being an intuitive. So now at least I have the terms. This is the vagus nerve. I'm like,
All right, so Megwyn, what are some things that we can do right now that might...
Okay,
like an exercise we could do.
Well, let's start with just show some of my little images, anatomical images.
Go ahead. You can show the live people. So the audio people, you'll have to describe it.
Let's see if I can do that. Okay, so this is an example of the 22 different bones of the skull separated. So we typically don't really think about that when we think of our skull, right? We think of it as just this one thing, right, that houses our brain. But actually, there's different bones, and in terms of singing, resonating, and expressing emotion, we use the resonators of the bones as much as the tissues, within the face to also resonate different tones. So sometimes if there's a lot of tension, like I had mentioned, in terms of if I talk like this, and you can hear there's a lot of tension right now in my tongue, and in my palate. So when we're talking about the vagus nerve, the king and the queen, like to kind of put them both up there, the king and the queen of the vagus nerve, like the hierarchy, is actually in, again, the face, but the higher circuits are in the palate. Okay. So I like to think of the palate as like the amphitheater of the emotion.
I love that.
Right? When you think about
an amphitheater.
Amphitheater, yeah. So just having that new perspective, when you think of like the globe theater, why is it shaped in that round way? Because it actually carries the sound. So our bodies are shaped in that very similar way. We have these kind of, the structure itself supports the full expression. So there's that. Then we also have the tongue, which is not just one muscle. It's basically 8 different muscles that come together. And it's also one of the, I lost it here. So one of the interesting bones, I could put it there. You can see here, there's a horseshoe-shaped bone that sits in the front of the cervical spine here, and it's called your hyoid bone. And basically, it supports the weight of the tongue. You know about all this, supports the weight of the tongue, and it's what allows us to communicate and express in language. Okay. So kind of like without the hyoid bone, we would not be able to be having this conversation today. And really, if you want to look at it a little deeper, without the ability to use this bone, right? Like, because we didn't always have access to articulate in this way. So, tying it again back to touch. And this is just more on theory level, but it seems to make sense that the primates that engaged in social grooming practices, that were touching each other, feeling each other, picking off, the insects, and communicating with those embodied sounds, those emotional sounds, those were the ones that ended up forming larger neocortex in the brain, more complex social structures, and, eventually also had this ability to speak and form language. So anyway, our hyoid bone is important because it's kind of like the bridge into this fuller expression. Okay. So, if you feel like sometimes you have like a lump in your throat and kind of like something like sort of like drop back, that's sometimes tension in your tongue, right? That's kind of locking in, and that's the vagus nerve. And that can often happen when you're nervous, like maybe you're about to, go and do a speech, or you're going to go and have a difficult conversation. So why don't we do a couple exercises that just kind of help to clear out some of that tension. So first thing is, let's find our hyoid bone. Okay. So if you take your pointer finger and your thumb, and so we're going to try to sort of palpate the hyoid bone. So you're going to kind of just go up and down, sort of. It's in the upper. It's in the upper area of your throat here. It's not so much here in the voice box. You want to go a little bit above that. But basically, if you were to just say, if you're at home and just say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or just say a few words. If your hyoid bone is fairly free, you guys can all do this while you're here. You're going to feel like a bouncing. It's like a little, like almost like a fluttering, right? Yes. Hello. Kind of thing.
You guys feel the bounce? For the audio people, it's like we're just above where would be an Adam's apple, right?
Yeah.
Like on either side of the neck.
Yes.
But not.
And it's delicate. This is a delicate bone, so you don't want to pinch too hard. It's just to kind of find the area. And so again, your tongue is connected here. So we're going to work with a technique that's used in singing. Okay. But this is a technique that I use a lot in kind of clearing some somatic tension. So we're going to lift the tongue a little bit, and we're going to stretch and relax the vocal cords using a technique called the vocal fry. Okay. So let me just kind of do it for you so you can hear how it sounds. You want to also be comfortable, so I just uncrossed my legs. That's a good idea. Just kind of get comfortable. So it's going to sound a little bit like a flutter. So it sounds like this. You hear that kind of sounds like a growling sort of sound.
James, yours is really good.
Yeah. So it's not always. Yeah. So let's do that. So this is one technique, right? This vocal fry. But I want to now focus it on. Let's release the tension at the root of the tongue. So the connections of the hyoid into the lower jaw.
Okay.
So it's kind of imagine like a cat, right? You know, your cat kind of like lifts lifts its throat like that. So I want you to specifically focus on creating space between your hyoid and your lower jaw. So it'll look like this. And you can turn your head a little right and left. And then just say hi. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Cool. There's a little more space there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's one area, right?
It's like relaxation in there.
It's like relaxation, but you know what we're doing is kind of like sculpting using resonance. We're using the resonance of the sound to actually sculpt ourselves from the inside out. That's why sometimes, when we really express ourselves, we release a lot of emotion. You might notice that all of a sudden your voice sounds deeper. And sounds more rich and full. So I always tell people, like, if you're nervous and you're going to go out and you're going to do a big speech, you're going to always keep upgrading your voice as long as you create that space, right? If you repress it and you try to narrow, then, maybe you're not kind of moving further. But so that's what these techniques are about. It's really just about creating that space, being big. And sometimes to be big feels scary.
Yeah.
So you want to try another one?
Let's do another one. And then we're going to do another one. And then I want to get to orgasmic empowerment.
Okay.
And what that is and like how we create that. Because we don't want,
that's a big topic.
That's going to be a big topic. Let's do another exercise though. I like
All right.
that.
So another one. So we did that one. So now let's
doing
work
it at home.
with.
I hope you guys are doing it at home.
I hope you're doing it at home.
Facebook Live.
They're doing it at home.
Right.
So now let's work with stretching the tongue forward. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hold the tongue with the upper and the lower lip. This one I like to call rooting the tongue. So this is actually going to stretch the vagus nerve because we've got connections of the vagus nerve that run through the tongue.
Okay.
So it's going to look like this. I'm going to take the tongue a little right and left. Now when you do this, try to not make your tongue squeeze like this. Try to keep it flat. You see how it's kind of like more thick, and you're using your lips to squeeze a little bit. And just the tip, yeah, I know that's kind of it. Kind of feels weird.
That's what he said.
I know it looks really weird. This one's actually, believe it or not, very tantric because with this exercise, you might feel it as you're doing this exercise. You might feel a little tingling down there because this one does connect oftentimes the energy of the root. No, saying you still want to make that vocal fry sound. Like,
Right.
and you're squeezing a little bit.
I do squeeze?
Yeah. You want to squeeze the tongue. Yeah. There you go. And try to relax the eyes. So if you close your eyes if you're doing this, you can also even put your hands on your face. That'll help to relax the muscles of the face, and it'll also make you feel a little less insecure about doing this exercise so that you don't have to see everybody.
I hope you guys are doing it at home and not just making fun of us.
I know. Okay, so that one is honestly, that one's a little more uncomfortable to do in a public space. So do that when you're on your own.
But that's for stretching the vagus nerve.
That's for stretching the vagus nerve, and you will also feel like a more freedom in the voice, and you oftentimes also feel more free in the lower abdomen as well, because when we stretch the tongue like that, we're helping to also stretch the connections that sometimes get caught in like our lower abdomen or tied to areas like our psoas. Because if, for instance, like when you have any kind of trauma, right, you contract back, it's often your tongue and your abdominal center that's pulling in.
Yeah.
So this is a way. So another great thing to do with that one is to extend, flex, and round the spine as you're doing that one as well. But let's do one that's a little easier. That's really fun. And this one's about opening up the middle of the face.
Okay.
And
our face
so the cheekbones are really, really important for opening up the whole face, which is why it also feels so good when we really laugh or when we cry. You also feel oftentimes when you're really in that deep cry, there's a release that will happen here. I wish I had my skull to show you, but there's a bone. There's a bone right here that's called your maxilla, and then there's your nasal bone. And so this one's a little bit more about like holding your boundary, right? So sometimes we feel like our boundaries are crossed, and we might not feel comfortable about expressing our boundaries, and you might feel like there's a lock here, like you're pulling yourself back. So I was compared to like animals in nature. So like the lion always teaches its cub how to growl, right? How to hold physical space, boundary. And we oftentimes just get taught to cross our legs and to repress our emotions and not really holding that primal intention, that presence. So let's pretend like we're animals, and let's give ourselves some pause here. Okay. So this will help also to connect it to our wrists and our shoulder girdle.
Do your pause,
it's all connected. So the movement of the arms is kind of like this, and you're going to lift your cheeks a little bit, right? So you're kind of showing your teeth a little bit. But not so much. Remember, it's still the vocal. Let me do it by myself, so that because this one you get people sort of think it's going to be like, but we're not contracting the throat. That's a really important thing. We're not creating tension. We're creating an opening of space. So listen just for a second. Kind of hear.
Everyone's going to demo.
I'm going to demo first, just so that you can hear. Because it does kind of feel silly and fun, and you kind of make that growling sound. But it's really about opening up. So. You see how I'm actually lifting my chest? Because this area, your sternum also connects here to your maxilla. So you'll feel as you press your chest forward. Yeah, you get that's it. Yeah, and then we could take that a step further and do it standing and just bending the knees so that we can get in our hips and all that. So basically through the head, we can open up the whole body. So, the next area would be, this is teasing, but I want to give people at least a chance to understand this. The next area would be to open up the jaw a little bit more. And then the last area would be to open up the eyes.
If I were going to do a full course of it and then do all the different exercises and steps, how long would it take me to do, let's say, let's say I had a daily routine of doing it. How long does it normally take? For the full?
There's basically 5 main exercises. But a lot of this is just, going a little bit with your intuition. So sometimes you'll just feel actually a great place to practice this, and this is going to sound silly, but if you're walking, around on the street and all of a sudden you just kind of feel, I'm holding back, doing this actually while you're walking can be really powerful for opening up, honestly. Really
and you can get away with it. I was going to say, you can get away with it in New York.
Or, before you're going into, if you have something to practice for, if you're going into a meeting, doing a couple of these exercises, and just to stress that the sound, the vocal fry is light. If you feel any strain in your throat, you're doing it too much, and you want to focus more on opening up the expression and on getting that vibratory feeling.
That was fun so far. I could see totally doing it, a whole routine of it and feeling the body heat up a lot, when you do yoga, you start to feel your body sort of
did you feel warmer?
It's a good expression of the stuff that's in there. I'm big on that, expressing the stuff.
These are great vocal warm-ups actually before you start working with tonality. Can kind of create that space. It's great for working with actors, but also just if you're feeling at all repressed, or if you're feeling oh God, I can't say what I need to say at work, you just kind of do a little bit of this. You go into the bathroom and you just and you just, these are natural things. So, the lion doesn't think, what's my 10-minute routine? Right? So I want to kind of emphasize that in a way. It's sort of play with these exercises and feel into them and feel what feels right. And they should be sort of, because if I say do it for 10 minutes, then you're going to not do it and you're going to feel like, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
No, just try one of them out, one day and, play with it and explore. Yeah.
I love that. The exploration. It's all about the exploration. Mm-hmm. Yay. And speaking of which, we got to talk about orgasmic empowerment.
Okay.
Because you talked a little bit about the vagus nerve and the connection and how,
talk about the satisfier.
We're going to talk about the satisfier. I can't wait to talk about the satisfier. But let's talk about, because I think we were talking the other day about orgasmic empowerment, and what I'm connecting it with is this idea of like manifestation and vibing high and like getting yourself in that state of like high vibration. And what better way to do that than with an orgasm, right?
Absolutely. Well,
right? If we're I got another amen back there. Right? So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going into more that metaphysical realm, I think it all still ties back into what we're talking about with the neurobiological stuff, because I kind of see the vagus nerve as really like the pathway of the chakras, actually.
Yeah.
Because the vagus nerve is really, it's tied to our root, and it's also tied to our crown. And it's tied to those high peak orgasmic states. And so we can kind of use what we learn from science and also work within the metaphysical realm, and we can, join those two. Yeah. So I'm really big on, connecting with the intimacy of the orgasm through the expression, through the full embodiment, especially the connection of the emotions and the voice and deepening the breath. All of this helps us to be able to connect with, the full channel, essentially. And, I don't necessarily think that there's one way of doing that. So there's so many different ways of exploring that. But I really believe that one of the things that I feel like I was brought here to do, and my mission through my life experience is to bring back the emotion to the orgasm and the importance of the potency and the alchemy of the emotion as it is tied.
And
to
women, we love emotion tied with our orgasm.
Yeah. So I think that the tears are actually the upper orgasm. Yeah. And that's actually, when we can fully open, when we can fully blossom in that space, not to say that you're going to be crying or weeping, but there's a brightness, there's a lucidity that starts to unlock within the eyes when we say yes to our emotions, and we feel how those emotions are tied throughout our entire body. So in those peak states of orgasmic energy, and ask yourself. Sometimes I'll have an intention for my orgasm, so we'll talk about the satisfier later, which is a great tool for kind of tapping into that. But I'll oftentimes, focus on something that I desire, something that I'm really have an emotional connection to, and I'll work with the sounds and specifically hold that intention as I move through the different energy centers within the body, and just unlock that energy. And that's actually, we're talking about the satisfier. That's actually how I believe that's kind of how I ended up working with the company, was that I found this product that's a non-touch clitoral vibrator.
Which grab that while you're talking. Which
is a life changer.
Non-touch clitoral vibrator. Well, while we're grabbing this, if anybody has anything that they want to ask a question to Megwyn about this, about orgasmic empowerment and being able to tie your orgasm with what you manifest and your emotions, or did anything come up for anybody back there? I heard some amens. Yes, Kuala, what, honey? Tell us.
The intention for your orgasm. I would like to learn more about that. How do you, so it's like, I want this to be a big orgasm or a small, what do you mean by intention?
Yeah, so more so that...
that's a good question.
That's a great question. So I think that orgasm can be really a form of meditation, and it's a really high level of meditation. And I'll explain it to you in this way, that I think that there actually is information in the emotions, actually in the tears. So there's been more recent studies, scientific studies, where they've actually looked at the tears and see these geometric structures in tears, and kind of like, the Emoto studies of water.
Yeah.
And so to me, what that's really pointing to is that, there is this information in the energy of our tears. So if you have an intention, if you have something that you're really called to create, maybe it's a new business.
Like you're manifesting things through the emotion of your orgasm. Like that's what makes it intentional.
Yeah, and maybe it's, maybe it's your beloved. Maybe it's, writing this next book, So, this, to me, the Satisfier is an awesome tool. This is specifically for women. This is the Satisfier Traveler.
I didn't know there was a travel one.
I guess I should.
I have. Megwyn gave me one the other day
because this is going to be a giveaway that we're giving away. But basically, the Satisfier works as a non-touch clitoral vibrator. So, like non-touch, how does that work, right? So
that's what I was saying on Friday before you gave me one.
Yeah. So just briefly, the clitoris, the female anatomy, is the clitoral glands are the external portion of the clitoris, and that's a concentration of 8,000 nerve endings. Yes.
We got a yes, it is.
Yes, it is. And that's just the external part.
Yeah.
So it's
that's not even the vaginal canal.
That's
right?
not
that's
even
like
what's inside, and that consists of tissues, or actually, erectile tissues. So. They fill with blood, similar to how penis would, but this is the external portion, so it's very powerful. I mean, clitoris actually comes from the Greek word of key, so it's really thought of for the woman to be the key to our pleasure, and that's why over 67% of women say that they actually need clitoral stimulation in order to reach orgasm.
Yeah.
So this tool is an amazing way of kind of touching that through this sort of non-touch wave-like pulse. So it's kind of like almost like an ocean wave where it's going out and it's drawing you in. So it's not like it's not overstimulating, which oftentimes the clitoris kind of basically has this hood, it's the clitoral hood, and so it gets at highs. It's like stop, no more. So with this one, it comes out of its shell and it. Then it gets excited inside, and then it activates all your pelvic floor muscles, and that's like also the key to your power, right? That holds our organs up. That holds the energy of the vagus nerve, because this is like the root of that vagus nerve. So the more expressive we can be, because remember I talked about, and this is all in science, all the research that they've done about the vagus nerve is that the facial muscles, the voice, these upper connections are actually the most powerful to help down-regulate our nervous system, to help bring us into these peak states, states of happiness, of joy, of deep connection. And it makes sense, but so when you bring that to your orgasm, you bring that intention, because when you have an intention, you got something on the line. It's not just a random thing. I want to have an orgasm, and that could be fine too. You just want to have pleasure, and that's perfect intention. You know?
But you can give them sort of a world purpose.
Yeah, you can give it a world purpose, right? As long as it inspires. The key is really the key. I think here is that it has to inspire you.
Yeah,
and maybe there's something that you have a desire around that you feel like, oh, I can't have that too, right?
Yeah.
So there's emotion tied to that. And I think that's like prime ground to actually accessing what's the information that you can access here, right? Through unlocking this connection and through being authentic. Yeah. So this is not about making sounds that you heard on this porn video that you just saw last night and trying to imitate, because that won't work. That actually that won't work. Yeah. But what I think is what's helpful about tools like the Satisfier.
Wait, can I interrupt you for a second? Because didn't you tell us a story about using the Satisfier to manifest work with the satisfying company or the Satisfier? Right,
that's exactly what happened.
So, that's exactly I love that.
So if you do. So basically, I got the Satisfier as a free gift from going to an event called the Sex and Medicine Summit that my friend Anita was hosting, and I took it home. You can use it in the water, so I was doing like my tantric practices like every night. I mean, like I get serious about the bathtub practices, okay? And I'm like in there every night. Like I'm thinking like to the different like levels. So I'm like doing my thing, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this out. I'd never experienced it before, and I am working with my breath. I'm working with all of this. Yeah. And it unlocks this like volcanic eruption of orgasmic energy that I have just never experienced ever working with a product. Yeah. Like definitely not. And it was in the peak of the orgasm, and I'm literally screaming. We talked about the hyoid bone. Yeah. Well, mine was like unleashed. It was like all of this was just like I could not believe it. And I was like screaming, and I was then twitching like afterwards. But
this thing does that. I believe you. Yes, this thing does that.
Yes, and it was in that moment when I was having the intensity of this orgasm that I could feel like viscerally that I was like, I want to work with this company. I want to do education. I was like not wasting it. I was like, sent it out, like resonated it. I was like, and I knew, and it was in that moment. And maybe you guys can talk about your experiences with this, but sometimes this was one of those moments where I knew it was going to happen. Yes, I did, because the way I felt in my body, it felt so right. It felt so just like spot on. Yeah. That, it took a little while, but that's basically, I made the connection, and I've been working with the company. It took about 5 months after that first initial orgasm. That's been about a year and a half ago. And it's just been an amazing journey, you know.
What I love about it so much is because I'm such a big believer in, with the law of attraction, it's like if you're vibrating on the level of that which you want, right? Like, so if it's money or like a business or whatever it is that you want. So, I mean, what better way to be vibrating on a high ecstatic level than to be stimulating yourself to it, right? What's up, Koala? Yes, honey.
Is it because you're at your most vulnerable state is why you want to be in with your orgasm, because you're at that level of vulnerability? So it's like you're sending out these waves that like the universe kind of...
You feel like you're asking if the vulnerability is what's connecting you to the manifestation?
Yes. Well, the vulnerability, and I'm get like more on the boring level, is what actually unlocks the body. Right. So even just on a visceral, physical level, physiological level, like when you see someone get vulnerable, what happens? You see their eyes widen. Yeah. You see their nectar pouring through their eyes. That you might see just like their face open up. Yeah. So it actually creates space to allow manifestation. So, if we're manifesting and we're thinking, I need this, I want this, and you're like tight and you're like, like the inside, you're like, oh, I can't have it. So I think that there is a connection to like being vulnerable. It allows the universe to hear that call, that connection. Because I think it's like, just like when you hear a baby cry, like that's a loud sound. Right? And the baby is very vulnerable. And sometimes we lose access to that realization that we can cry out, we can call out to the divine mother, the divine father, whatever you want to call it, the energy of the universe. And we can say, I'm being vulnerable, I'm opening up to this. And, I think also in terms of manifestation, I had a friend talk to me about this, and I think that it's kind of a nice frame, is that if you're focusing on manifestation to also, express, or whatever's in my highest good. Because, when you express that, you say, I trust the universe to bring me what's in my best interest. That actually allows you to open up further, right? It's like,
because it's faith, it's trust, it's like faith, it's release.
And I have a question now.
Get it out, Pam.
I'm all over the place. But the voice, going back to the vagus nerve and the power of speech. Like I don't think that, and I'm talking about me, that we kind of take the ability to not to communicate, but just to just push it out as you would similar to giving birth, that you are like it's a portal and that you have to push it out. So we have been, especially as women, been conditioned to hold it, to hold it in. I had a massage, the first time I ever had a full body massage. The woman, she said, "You are so tight," but what she said was she couldn't believe how tight. I didn't even know you had like muscles. Like she squeezed my earlobes and like right here. How much tension and how much stress that we actually, that to the point that we have normalized this condition.
Survival mood.
Yeah,
it all tensed up and surviving.
Right. So, and we're not used to, and we think that vulnerability is an explicative, that but it really is that portal. And I'll go back. One of the most satisfying sexual encounters that I had. I'm not married now, but when I was married, was talking. Not just, but actually talking about what I was experiencing, and not just what he was doing.
You mean like during it?
I spoke, and you know what it was like? It was almost, like a spiritual thing, because I felt things that I had never put, and it wasn't a conscious thing. It was just. It was like giving birth. And I remember, afterward, both of us were like, but being able and living at that higher level, that higher energy, and manifesting, I think is so important. But just being mindful and intentional that it's not just the talk, that we have to release this energy and give ourselves and our bodies permission to emote on that level.
Yes, totally. Absolutely. The giving of permission is a big thing.
Yeah.
Like the releasing. Yeah. And allowing it.
And our vocal cords, when you're talking about birth, if you look at the vocal cords, I think they look a lot like a yoni myself. So I kind of think
totally
it really, and so I just think it's sort of like the upper birth canal, you know? So oftentimes I'll work with clients and maybe they'll have a particular intention. Like sometimes we have mantras, we have something that we're focusing on, and I'll have them express it out loud. And you'll be able to hear certain words that there's a contraction around. And that often is a sign that that's a word that they're not in alignment with, or they don't feel really right with, or they don't feel like they can have that. And so we'll do these exercises to kind of help tap into creating that space and owning and claiming those words. Because words are not as powerful when they're not tied to the body. And that's why I talk about this kind of the connections of the primates, right? It's like there are sensors in our skin that detect high and low frequency sounds. Those sensors in our skin are tied to our brain. So when we think of sound, when we think of voice, we typically think of what's just coming out of our mouth. We don't think about the sound that's in our bodies. But you know that when someone speaks to you, when your lover's, really close to you, and that their
like
voice
vibration,
and there's that vibration.
But you can actually feel the pressure, the stroke on the body, and that's what I meant by being able to describe that. Not what his touch felt like, but what I actually heard. I've never had an experience quite like that before, but it was amazing.
Well, not to go back to the Satisfier, but to go back to the Satisfier, I feel like that's something you can use this to create all the time. Having experienced it myself this weekend.
So tell us about that.
So, I mean, you had told me, and I love it when you talk about the story of it and the fact that it's the no-touch orgasm and all of that. And to tell you the truth, I was ready to just be open. I wasn't even skeptical. I was like, let me just see, because I don't mind a toy. I don't mind a B.O.B. Let me just admit it. But I mean, I was like, okay, no touch. This is going to be interesting. And I didn't do the whole bathtub thing. I almost kind of wish I did, and I'm going to do that at some point, like with the candles and everything. I was like, let me just try it out. And I have to say, without giving all my business out there, that was probably the most like emotionally powerful orgasm I've ever had. Wow. Like, you know, obviously without a partner, it probably, because I decided to meditate while I was like actually meditate on something that I want to manifest, because I love your story about, you know, working with Satisfier. So what I did was I did a money meditation. And so as I was using it, I was actually adding up the numbers in my bank account to the end goal number. And when I hit that number in my mind, everything just like, whoa! It was like an explosion.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And it's not just, you know, because I love money, but it was like, it was like an actual feeling of like, this feels so possible, and I feel so emotionally connected to its possibility. Wow. Yeah.
And it felt good.
Oh, it felt so good. Like, I don't even need to have the money now, because I feel like I already have that feeling of like what it feels like to have it. Wow. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's good. I highly recommend this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, tell people how they can get it. I can't believe we're like almost out of time. We only have a few minutes left. Tell people how they can find you, Megwyn. I hate to cut everybody off. You know, we're going to have a part 2 about this at some point. But tell everyone how they can find you, how they can get a Satisfier, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so if you want a Satisfier, you can get yours at satisfier.com, and that's Satisfier with a Y. So I can't
try to put it up. Yeah, there you go. And we'll also put a link in the comments too.
There it is. Yeah. Satisfier with a Y. And there's a lot of other products as well, but the non-touch clitoral vibrator is what we're talking about today.
That one's the key.
Yeah.
And then there's this. This is the Satisfying Balls. What's this one about?
So I gave you a bundle because you're going to do a raffle or...
Yeah, sure. Do a giveaway with them?
Giveaway with these.
All right. Well, what should the contest be?
Yeah.
Wake up.
Oh, we only got a minute for the audio people. Well, Facebook Live people.
Wait now.
Right? For the Facebook Live people, we have a few more minutes. For the Armed Radio people, I love you. Never forget you're a love machine. If you ever start to feel like you're not getting enough, just make more and ask for candy. We're going to be posting on Facebook the links of where you can get your Satisfier. And you guys always know you can come to Facebook and watch the replay. You can skip to the end for all the part that you heard, and then you can see, you know, whatever other information we give. I love you, Armed Radio. I know you're going to dip out before we're done. And goodbye. Thank you. Thank you for always listening. I love you. Facebook Live, don't go anywhere yet. So, you said, so